Three rulers, loved by their people and capable of loving them back. Each one seemed destined to build something that would last forever. But like all good things, it didn't stay that way. Something inside each of them broke, quietly at first, then completely. Their empires crumbled beneath their feet, their reputations turned to dust, and the very people who once worshipped them were the same people who watched them fall. So how did this happen? Stick around till the end, because by the third story, you won't believe any of this actually happened. Contestant 1. Ivan the Terrible. Picture this. A 3-year-old boy, orphaned and left to survive in his own palace like a straight-up beggar, while grown men robbed him blind. Now imagine that same kid growing up to burn down one of his own cities because of a rumor. This is the story of how Russia's first Tsar went from a traumatized orphan to one of the most feared men in history. First on the list, Ivan the Terrible, otherwise known as Ivan IV Vasilievich, the first Tsar of Russia. Born in 1530, he became the Grand Prince of Moscow at the age of 3, after his father died due to blood poisoning from an infected leg. Daddy had that stanky leg. It is widely believed that his mother was poisoned when Ivan was 8 by rival nobles named the Boyars, although the claim is widely disputed. Due to both parents dying, Ivan and his brother were effectively orphaned. Ivan and his brother lived in his palace like beggars, according to Ivan himself. They were sometimes left without food or clothing, while the Boyar families looted the royal treasury. Growing up, he witnessed political murders in his own home as a child. This played a part in who he grew up to be, when his first recorded act of violence being recorded just at age 13. A guardian that he hated, named Prince Andrei Shuisky, was thrown to hunting dogs on Ivan's order. Absolute savagery, if I had to say so myself. Ivan was crowned Tsar of all of Russia in 1547. Just at age 16, he was the first Russian ruler to formally take the title of Tsar. From 1547 up until 1560, Ivan ruled with a group of trusted advisors, known as the Chosen Council. Through this, he formed a local government and military. This led him to conquer the Khanates of Kazan in 1552 and Astrakhan in 1556, massively expanding Russian territory and even opening trade relations with England. With things going much better in his life, he married Anastasia Romanovna. She was the emotional support in his life, often cooling his temper, advising him on political plays he made, and overall, they loved each other. Things were for really looking up for this dude. However, as all good things come to an end, Ivan's downfall started here, when he lost his strongest pillar of support. Anastasia suddenly died in 1560. He was convinced that the Boyars had poisoned her. When Anastasia's remains were forensically tested centuries later, they showed elevated mercury levels, supporting this claim. This caused Ivan to spiral into insane paranoia. In 1564, he abruptly abandoned Moscow and threatened to abdicate the throne. When the city's population begged him to return, he agreed, on the condition that he was allowed to punish traitors. This created the Oprichnina, a private secret police. They rode around with dog heads on the front of horses, which symbolized sniffing out the traitors, and brooms attached to the back of the horses, which symbolized sweeping away treason. They tortured, executed, and confiscated the land of thousands of nobles. One of the most brutal moments of the Oprichnina happened in 1570, when Ivan became convinced that Novgorod, one of the richest cities in Russia, was secretly plotting to defect to Poland-Lithuania, basically switching sides and joining Russia's enemy instead of staying loyal to him. For 5 weeks straight, Ivan personally led a campaign of pure terror on his own city. Entire families were tied to sleds and shoved through holes cut in the frozen river. drowning in the freezing water below. Nah, that's just diabolical. Even I ain't that savage. Crazy type of behavior. Estimates on the death toll range anywhere from a few thousand to over 10,000 people. And get this, historians still aren't even sure the whole switching sides to Poland thing was true. It might have all started from one forged letter. That just shows how paranoid Ivan really was. Dude took no chances and once again made sure dude was heard like a turd. Brother had the whole city put away just cause some dude wrote a little prank on a piece of paper. Damn. This next part on the timeline is one of the most well-known things about Ivan, even creating one of the most famous paintings to come from Russia. The painting is called Ivan the Terrible and His Son Ivan by Ilya Repin. Now, what could have Ivan done, which was arguably worse than killing thousands of his own people? He accidentally murdered his own son. In 1581, in a rage during an argument, Ivan struck his eldest son, an heir to the throne, Ivan Ivanovich. Goated name. His iron-tipped staff hit his son's head, causing him to lay on the floor and lose hella blood. Ivan the Terrible held him in his arms until help arrived. Unfortunately, it was way too late for him, dying just days later. To add a little cherry on top, this left Russia without a competent heir, as the other son was reportedly unfit to rule, causing Russia's chaotic time of troubles after Ivan's death. Ivan never recovered from the guilt, and karma would soon catch up to him. In 1584, at age 53, Ivan died while playing chess. It is said that his body contained extremely high mercury content, believed to either be due to medical treatment or from being poisoned. Based on how his mother and lover died, I think you know how he died. And that is how Ivan the Terrible went out. Paranoid, guilty, and probably poisoned by the same stuff that killed everyone he loved. But Ivan wasn't the only ruler who flipped the script overnight, turning from a good little kid to a vicious ruler. Next, we're jumping from Russia all the way to ancient Rome, where a baby, literally nicknamed Little Boots, would grow up to make Ivan look like he was holding back. Contestant 2. Caligula. There's a reason Rome went crazy when this next ruler took the throne. His father was one of the most beloved generals in the empire, and as a toddler, soldiers nicknamed him after his own tiny military boots. That same adorable kid would grow up to build a 2-mile bridge across the ocean just to prove an astrologer wrong. And that's one of the tamer things that he did. This is a story of how Rome's golden boy became one of history's most infamous tyrants. Caligula, full name Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, Emperor of Rome. Born in 12 AD, his dad, Germanicus, was a Roman general, wildly popular, and little baby Caligula used to roll with him on campaigns, dressed in a mini soldier's uniform. That's where the nickname Caligula comes from. Little Boot, ironic considering what he grew up to do. Adorable start though. In 19 AD, his father died, likely poisoned, and it's widely believed the emperor was behind it, whose name was Tiberius. Tiberius was the second Roman emperor, ruling from 14 to 37 AD, and by most accounts, dude got real paranoid and jealous of anyone more popular than him. Germanicus, Caligula's dad, was beloved by the army and the people, way more than Tiberius ever was. So it's widely believed Tiberius saw him as a threat to his power and had him poisoned in 19 AD to get him out of the way. Tiberius then went full paranoid mode and basically wiped out the rest of Caligula's family. His mom was beaten and exiled, where she died. One brother was straight up starved to death in prison. Another brother starved himself just to avoid getting tortured first. Damn, bro. Whole family got smoked before he even hit his 20s. Caligula was one of the only ones who survived. And that's because Tiberius kept him close, basically as a hostage, on the island of Capri. In 37 AD, Tiberius finally died, and Caligula became emperor at just 24. Rome went crazy for him. He was the son of their favorite general, and everyone assumed he'd be a breath of fresh air after Tiberius's dark, reclusive final years. Early on, he delivered. Bonuses for the military, huge public games like gladiator fights and chariot races, brought back exiled political prisoners, and cut unpopular taxes. Dude was a real one. The people finally felt relief. Then, about 7 months into his reign, Caligula got extremely sick. Nobody's totally sure what it was, but historians agree on one thing. He was never the same after. Tossed childhood trauma, unchecked power, and a front row seat to Tiberius's paranoia into one soup pot of chaos, and you get exactly what Caligula became. Completely unhinged and insane. Soup mentioned. To begin his terror, he had his own adopted heir executed. Same with his father and brother-in-law. Then, he declared himself a literal living god and had a temple built so people could worship him. Delusional behavior. Can't fake that. He also built a 2-mile floating bridge across an entire bay, just so he could ride his horse across it. Why? Because an astrologer once said he had as much chance of becoming emperor as riding a horse across that bay. He really got him there, didn't he? From there, it got real dark. Public executions for entertainment, people tortured over minor insults, and when the treasury ran dry from all his extra spending, he started seizing citizens' fortunes on completely made-up charges. This man was a menace to society. In 41 AD, after less than 4 years in power, Caligula's own guards, the same guys sworn to protect him, stabbed him to death in a palace hallway. The lead guy, Cassius Chaerea, was somebody Caligula used to mock and humiliate constantly. Karma really said, say less. His wife and infant daughter were killed right after. Now, here's a myth to bust. A lot of the wildest Caligula stories, like wanting to make his horse an actual government official or certain family scandals, come from writers who lived decades after him, working for emperors who benefited from making him look as insane as possible. So some of it's probably exaggerated, but the core of it, a beloved golden boy who broke completely after a near-death illness. That part's very real. And that is how Little Boot went from Rome's golden child to one of its most feared names. But we're not done with rulers who flipped the script, because next, we're heading to England, where one of the most handsome, talented, young kings in history slowly transformed into a paranoid tyrant who executed 2 of his own wives. Yo guys, quick little break before we move on to the next contestant. I just want to thank all of you that have been saying nice things in the comments. Even makes a real OG shed one singular tear. I appreciate every one of you homies. Also, please check out my other social medias too, link in the description. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and maybe like the video. You know, help a homie out some more. Now, back to Henry VIII. Contestant 3. Henry VIII. Before he was known for chopping off heads, this king was considered the total package. Athletic, brilliant, multilingual, and one of the most celebrated young monarchs in Europe. Decades later, the same man was morbidly obese, in constant pain, and had executed 2 of his own wives, all while single-handedly breaking England away from the Catholic Church. This is the story of Henry VIII. Born in 1491, Henry wasn't even supposed to be a king. He was a second son, but when his older brother Arthur died in 1502, a 10-year-old Henry suddenly became the heir. By 17, in 1509, he was king. And back then, Henry was everything a king needed to be. Athletic, handsome, spoke multiple languages, even composed his own music. He was deeply religious and basically celebrated across Europe as a golden boy of the Renaissance. Total 1500s heartthrob. Shortly after taking the throne, he married Catherine of Aragon, who was actually his late brother's widow. Play a move. And by most accounts, Homeboy genuinely loved her for years. She even ran the country as a regent while he was off in France and helped England win a major battle against Scotland. Real power couple energy. For the next 2 decades, Henry funded the arts, worked with some of the biggest scholars of all time, fought successful wars in France, and built up the English Navy. Dude was really thriving, but here's where all goes left. Catherine could not give him a surviving son. Multiple miscarriages, infant deaths, only one daughter who lived. Henry started seeing this as divine punishment, since Catherine had briefly been married to his brother first. Around the same time, he fell head over heels for a woman named Anne Boleyn, who refused to just be a side chick. She wanted marriage or nothing. When the Pope said no to annulling his marriage, Henry did the unthinkable. He broke England away from the entire Catholic Church and declared himself the actual head of a brand new church. Bro couldn't get a divorce, so he started his own religion instead. Anybody who didn't accept this got executed for treason, including his former best friend and closest advisor, Thomas More, beheaded in 1535. Then, Henry dissolved monasteries across the entire country, seizing centuries worth of wealth and land, and displacing thousands of monks and nuns in the process. And then, the wives, Henry married 6 times total. Catherine of Aragon, marriage annulled. Anne Boleyn, executed for adultery, charges most historians think were completely fabricated. Jane Seymour died shortly after childbirth, and honestly, seems like his favorite. Anne of Cleves, marriage annulled because he wasn't attracted to her. Catherine Howard, executed for adultery in 1542, and Catherine Parr, who actually outlived him. Divorced, beheaded, died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. Bro really lived a whole nursery rhyme. On top of all that, a jousting accident in 1536 left him with a leg wound that never healed properly, causing him constant pain and infection for the rest of his life. He also became severely overweight in his final years, reportedly needing devices just to get moved around. Historians think the chronic pain, possible brain injuries from jousting falls, and just unchecked absolute power all played a part in turning him into the paranoid, cruel king people remember. Henry VIII died in 1547 at 55, having executed 2 wives, his former best friend, his top minister, and a long list of nobles and clergy. The Henry everybody pictures, fat, paranoid, chopping off heads, that's really just the second half of his life. The first 20 years, he was genuinely one of the most promising, talented young monarchs England ever had, which honestly makes the fall off even crazier. So there you have it. 3 rulers, 3 completely different empires, but the same exact pattern. Loved, then feared. Adored, then avoided. Because sometimes the nicest people really do snap the hardest. If you made it this far, appreciate you sticking around for all 3 of these. Because trust me, there's way more crazy stories where these came from. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment telling me which one of these shocked you the most. Anyways, I'ma catch you dudes later. That's a story, that's a verse, that's a rap. Young Hemmy, out.